Poor mute girl rejected at a blind date. Single dad at the next table signed to her. You deserve better. The upscale bistro on Fifth Avenue hummed with the quiet elegance of clinking wine glasses and murmured conversations. But at table 7, silence hung heavy, awkward, suffocating. Lily Chen sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, watching the man across from her check his phone for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. Ryan Mitchell, her blind date, had barely looked at her since they'd ordered. When she'd tried signing to him, explaining through gestures and her phone's text-to-speech app that she was mute due to childhood trauma, his expression had shifted from polite interest to thinly veiled disappointment. Look, Ryan finally said, not quite meeting her eyes, you seem nice and all, but I don't think this is going to work out. I mean, communication is really important in a relationship, you know? He signaled for the waiter, already reaching for his wallet. I'll cover my half. Good luck with everything. The words stung less than the casual dismissal in his tone, as if she were a broken appliance he'd decided not to purchase. Lily felt the familiar burn behind her eyes. Not quite tears, but close. She'd been through this before, 3 times this year alone. At the neighboring table, Ethan Walsh sat with his 7-year-old daughter, Sophie, who was coloring quietly in her Disney princess coloring book. He'd been trying not to eavesdrop, but the conversation, or lack thereof, at the next table was impossible to ignore. When he saw the man stand up and leave the young woman sitting there alone, something in his chest tightened. Sophie tugged his sleeve, her small hands moving in fluid gestures. Daddy, that lady is sad. The mean man left her. Ethan's jaw clenched. Sophie had been born deaf, and he'd learned ASL before she'd turned 2. It had become their secret language, their special bond in a world that often didn't understand. Watching that man walk away from someone for something she couldn't control felt personal, familiar, wrong. He watched Lily sit there, shoulders squared with forced dignity, staring at the untouched pasta in front of her. She was trying so hard to look unaffected, but he could see the slight tremor in her hands. Sophie signed again, more insistently. Can we help her? Ethan made a decision. He stood, Sophie's hand in his, and walked the few steps to Lily's table. When she looked up, surprised, he began to sign, his movements clear and deliberate. I couldn't help but notice what just happened. I'm sorry that guy was such an idiot. You deserved better than that. Lily's eyes widened, then filled with something that looked like relief, mixed with disbelief. Her hands moved hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. You know sign language. My daughter is deaf, Ethan signed, gesturing to Sophie, who waved shyly. We both are fluent. Would you like some company? Nobody should eat alone after being treated like that. For the first time that evening, Lily smiled. It transformed her whole face, lighting up her dark eyes. She nodded, and Sophie immediately climbed into the chair Ryan had abandoned, pulling out her crayons. What Lily didn't know, what nobody in that restaurant knew, was that Ethan Walsh was barely holding his own life together. A widower for 2 years, working double shifts as an emergency room nurse to keep his daughter in good schools and speech therapy. He hadn't been on a date since his wife, Clara, had died in a car accident. Most days, he felt like he was drowning in responsibility and grief, kept afloat only by Sophie's laughter. And what Ethan didn't know was that the quiet, kind woman now teaching his daughter to sign butterfly was Lily Chen, estranged daughter of tech billionaire Victor Chen, who'd walked away from a fortune when her father had refused to accept her disability, treating her muteness like a family embarrassment to be hidden away. In that moment, 2 broken people found themselves unexpectedly seen by each other. And in a city of 8 million souls, that was rarer than gold. As Sophie giggled, successfully signing her first full sentence to Lily, neither adult could have predicted that this chance encounter would change everything, would save them both in ways they desperately needed, but had stopped hoping for. The evening was just beginning. Over the next hour, the awkwardness of Lily's failed date dissolved into something warmer. Sophie had abandoned her coloring book entirely, captivated by this new friend who spoke her language. Lily taught her signs for ice cream, rainbow, and adventure, Sophie's 3 favorite things. Ethan watched, his heart doing something it hadn't done in years, softening, She doesn't usually warm up to strangers this fast, he signed to Lily. You're good with kids. I used to volunteer at a deaf school. Lily signed back. Before my father. Before I had to step away from that life. Her hands faltered slightly, and Ethan caught the shadow that crossed her face. You don't have to explain, he signed gently. We all have complicated stories. When their server approached with the check, Ethan noticed Lily reaching for her purse with trembling hands. She pulled out a worn wallet, clearly counting carefully. He made a quick decision. I've got this, he said aloud, simultaneously signing it for clarity. Lily shook her head firmly, signing, You don't have to do that. You've already been so kind. Consider it payment for giving my daughter the best evening she's had in months. Ethan signed with a smile. Look at her. She's glowing. Sophie was indeed radiant, chattering in sign language about how Lily had promised to teach her more signs next time. Next time. The phrase hung in the air between the two adults like a question neither dared ask. Outside the restaurant, the October evening had turned crisp. Sophie skipped ahead slightly, practicing her new signs in the glow of streetlights. Lily hesitated on the sidewalk, clearly uncertain how to end the evening. Thank you, she signed to Ethan. For seeing me. Really seeing me. Most people don't. Most people are idiots, Ethan signed back, making her laugh. A silent, beautiful laugh that lit up her whole face. Can I ask you something? She nodded. Would you want to get coffee sometime? With Sophie and me? She'd never forgive me if I let you disappear. Lily bit her lip, considering. Then slowly, she nodded and pulled out her phone, typing quickly. She showed him the screen. Tomorrow, there's a cafe near Central Park that serves hot chocolate with little marshmallows. Sophie would love it. It's a date, Ethan said, then immediately flushed. I mean, not a date, just... Lily touched his arm gently, smiling, and signed, I know what you meant. As Lily walked toward the subway, she felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest. Hope. For 3 years since her father had essentially disowned her, she'd been surviving on waitressing jobs and the small apartment she shared with 2 roommates. She'd convinced herself she was fine alone, that expecting connection would only lead to disappointment. But tonight, a stranger and his daughter had reminded her what kindness looked like. What Lily didn't see was the black Mercedes that had been idling across the street, its occupant watching the entire exchange with narrowed eyes. Ryan Mitchell sat in the driver's seat, his initial irritation at being stuck with a disabled date morphing into something uglier as he watched Lily laugh with another man. His ego, already bruised by her clear relief when he'd left, couldn't handle seeing her happy so quickly. He didn't want her, but he didn't want anyone else to want her either. Through his family connections, he'd learn who this man was, and then he'd make sure Lily Chen understood her place in the world. Invisible, insignificant, forgettable. Ryan pulled out his phone and made a call. 3 blocks away, Ethan Walsh helped Sophie into her pajamas, his mind still on Lily's smile. For the first time since Clara died, he felt something other than exhausted. He felt alive. Neither Ethan nor Lily could have known that their coffee date tomorrow would be interrupted by forces that would test exactly how strong new bonds could be. Neither knew that choosing to see each other tonight had set events in motion that would change both their lives forever. But in that moment, both went to sleep with something they'd been missing. The quiet certainty that maybe, just maybe, they weren't as alone as they'd thought. The cafe near Central Park was everything Lily had promised. Sunlight streamed through large windows, and Sophie's delighted squeal, the only sound she could make, when she saw the mountain of marshmallows on her hot chocolate made both adults grin. Best recommendation ever. Ethan signed to Lily, though I'm pretty sure she's going to be bouncing off walls for hours. Worth it. Lily signed back, her eyes crinkling with amusement. They'd settled into an easy rhythm. Conversation flowing through sign language, while Sophie drew pictures on napkins. One of Lily, one of her dad, all 3 of them together. The child's simple inclusion spoke volumes. Ethan had just started telling Lily about his work at the hospital when his phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Frowning, he checked it. His face went pale. The messages were from an unknown number, but their content was crystal clear. Photos of him and Sophie leaving their apartment building that morning. a screenshot of Sophie's school registration page, his work schedule from the hospital database, and then the message that made his blood run cold. Lily Chen belongs in silence. Keep her company, and your daughter will learn what it's like to lose more than just her hearing. Back off, nurse. This is your only warning. Lily noticed the change immediately. What's wrong? Ethan's hand shook slightly as he signed. Someone just threatened Sophie. He showed her the phone, watching her face drain of color as she read. Ryan, she signed, the name sharp and angry in her movements. He did this before with another woman who rejected him. His family has money, connections. I'm so sorry. I should never have— Stop, Ethan signed firmly. This isn't your fault. This is a criminal making threats against my child. Against you. He was already pulling out his phone to call the police when a man approached their table. Tall, expensive suit. The kind of smooth confidence that comes from never being told no. Behind him, 2 security guards lingered near the entrance. Lily, the man said, his voice carrying that particular condescension of assumed authority. We need to talk. Lily's hands froze mid-sign. My father. She signed to Ethan, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. Victor Chen didn't bother acknowledging Ethan or Sophie. His entire focus was on his daughter. I heard you've been getting yourself into trouble. Again. He pulled out a folder, dropping it on the table. Inside were printouts of the threatening messages, along with additional photos Ethan hadn't received. Ryan Mitchell's father called me this morning. Apparently you've upset his son. Made him look foolish. Lily's hands moved furiously. Made him look foolish? He left me sitting in a restaurant like garbage. English, Lily, Victor said coldly. You know I never learned that. Language of yours. The casual dismissal, the deliberate refusal to communicate in his daughter's language. Ethan felt his protective instincts flare. He stood, positioning himself slightly between Lily and her father. Mr. Chen, Ethan said, his voice level but hard. Your daughter is being threatened. That's what should concern you, not some entitled rich kid's bruised ego. Victor finally looked at Ethan, his gaze dismissive. And you are? Someone who actually cares about Lily's well-being, Ethan replied, which seems to be more than can be said for her own father. The words hung in the air like a slap. Victor's face tightened. Careful, Mr. Walsh, Ethan Walsh, and I'm not afraid of you or the Mitchell family. You want to threaten my daughter to control yours, try it. See what happens. Sophie, sensing the tension, clutched her father's hand, her eyes wide and worried. Victor Chen studied Ethan for a long moment, then turned back to Lily. The Mitchell family wants an apology, public. In exchange, they'll back off, otherwise, he gestured to the photos. Ryan's father has resources, legal and otherwise. Lily stood, her whole body trembling with anger. She signed something so fast Ethan almost missed it, but he caught enough. I'd rather die than apologize for existing. You're being dramatic, Victor said tiredly. This is exactly why I tried to keep you protected. Hidden? You mean ashamed, Ethan translated, signing as he spoke. You wanted her hidden because you were embarrassed. Not to protect her, to protect yourself. The cafe had gone quiet. Other patrons were watching now, some with phones out. Victor's jaw clenched. This conversation is over. Lily, you have 48 hours to decide. Apologize or deal with the consequences. And Mr. Walsh? His gaze turned cold. Associating with my daughter comes with costs. Are you really willing to pay them? He left without waiting for an answer, his security detail following like shadows. Lily collapsed back into her chair, tears streaming silently down her face. Sophie immediately climbed into her lap, wrapping small arms around her neck in a fierce hug. Ethan knelt beside them, his mind racing. He had 48 hours to figure out how to protect both Lily and Sophie from men who thought power and money made them untouchable. What Victor Chen didn't know was that Ethan Walsh had spent 2 years navigating hospital bureaucracy, insurance companies, and legal systems to secure his daughter's future. He'd learned to fight in ways that didn't require wealth or connections, and what Ryan Mitchell didn't know was that his threatening messages had been automatically backed up to a cloud server the moment they arrived, preserved as evidence. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. But this time, Lily wasn't alone. And that changed everything. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Sophie was finally down, her small form curled around her favorite stuffed elephant. But his mind kept replaying the cafe confrontation. He'd dealt with difficult families in the ER, people who thought money could buy special treatment, who threatened lawsuits over wait times. But this was different. This was personal. His phone lit up around midnight. A video call from an unknown number. Hesitantly, he answered. Lily's face appeared, tear-stained but determined. She was sitting in a cramped bedroom, holding up a notepad with written words. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have dragged you into this." "You didn't drag me anywhere," Ethan said firmly, making sure she could see his lips. "I chose to step in. I'd do it again," she wrote faster. "Ryan's family owns half the city. My father controls the other half. You can't fight them both. Watch me." Ethan leaned forward. "Lily, I work with people every day who are told they're powerless, that their disabilities make them less, that they should just accept how the world treats them. You know what I've learned? The system only works when good people stay silent." Lily's eyes widened. She wrote, "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we document everything. Every threat, every message. We go to the police, the media if we have to. Rich men get away with this because their victims are afraid to fight back. But Sophie needs to see her dad stand up for what's right. She needs to see that bullies don't win just because they have money." He paused. "But Lily, I need you to be honest with me. Is there anything else I should know? About your family, your situation?" Lily bit her lip, then began typing on her phone. The message was long, and when she turned the screen to the camera, Ethan's eyebrows shot up. "You're Victor Chen's only heir? To a multi-billion-dollar tech empire?" She nodded, then typed more. "I walked away 3 years ago. He gave me an ultimatum. Undergo treatment for my muteness. Surgery I didn't want and doctors said wouldn't work. Or be cut off. I chose my own path. He thinks I'll come crawling back eventually. That I'll get tired of being poor and apologize for embarrassing him? And the waitressing? It's honest work. I'm good at it. Better than being a puppet in his corporate empire." Ethan sat back, processing. Then something occurred to him. "Lily, if you're his only heir, he needs you more than you need him, doesn't he?" She paused, then slowly nodded. "So this isn't just about Ryan Mitchell's wounded pride. This is your father using the situation to pressure you to come home. To fall in line." Another nod. She wrote, "He does this. Creates problems, then offers to solve them, if I obey." "Then we don't play his game," Ethan said. "We change the rules entirely." Over the next hour, they formed a plan. Ethan would contact a lawyer friend from the hospital, someone who specialized in harassment cases. Lily would reach out to a journalist she'd befriended during her volunteer days, someone who'd covered disability rights issues. They'd build a case not just against Ryan Mitchell's threats, but against the entire system that let wealthy men harass women with impunity. What they didn't know was that Victor Chen was having his own midnight conversation. In his penthouse office, Victor listened to his head of security's report with growing irritation. "You're telling me my daughter is planning to go public? To embarrass me in the media?" She's been in contact with Sarah Martinez at the Times. Martinez specializes in exposés about abuse of power. Victor drummed his fingers on his desk. Ryan Mitchell's father had been a useful business partner, but he was becoming a liability. And Lily, stubborn, principled Lily, who'd inherited her mother's fierce independence. His late wife would have been proud. He found himself unexpectedly proud too. "Stand down," Victor said suddenly. "Sir, pull our security. Cancel the pressure campaign on Walsh. If Ryan Mitchell contacts you again, tell him the Chen family is no longer involved. But sir, you said..." "I said a lot of things." Victor looked at the photo on his desk. Lily at age 8. Before the accident that took her voice, laughing with her mother in their garden. "Maybe it's time to try a different approach." He made another call, this one to his lawyer. "I need you to file something for me. Harassment charges against Ryan Mitchell on behalf of my daughter. And I need it done quietly. She shouldn't know it came from me." Across town, Ryan Mitchell received a very different call. His father, Richard, was furious. "What the hell were you thinking, threatening a man's child? You've made us all look like monsters." "But Dad, Shut up. Victor Chen just withdrew his support for our merger. Do you have any idea how much money you've cost me? Your little vendetta has turned into a PR nightmare. The girl was defective. I was doing her a favor even showing up. The silence on the other end of the line was dangerous. Pack a bag. You're going to our London office tonight, and you'll stay there until I clean up this mess. Ryan started to protest, but the line went dead. By dawn, the landscape had shifted. Ethan woke to find the threatening messages had stopped. Lily received a cryptic text from an unknown number. The Mitchell boy has been handled. You're safe now. A friend. Neither of them knew who their mysterious ally was, but both felt the immediate relief of pressure being lifted. That afternoon, when Ethan took Sophie to the park, Lily met them there. Sophie ran to her immediately, showing off a new sign she'd learned. Family. Are you my family now? Sophie signed to Lily, her face hopeful. Lily looked at Ethan, her eyes asking permission. He nodded slightly, smiling. If you'll have me, Lily signed back, and Sophie launched herself into her arms with a delighted squeal as Ethan watched them together, his daughter, and this woman who'd stumbled into their lives so unexpectedly. He felt something he'd thought died with Clara. The possibility of a future that held more than just survival. A future that held joy. But in the shadows of the park, a private investigator hired by Victor Chen took photos. Not for blackmail this time, just for a father who wanted to see his daughter smile again, even if he'd forgotten how to tell her he loved her. The story was far from over, but for now, in the golden autumn sunlight, 3 people who'd been alone found themselves becoming something new. Something like hope. 3 months later, the first snow of winter dusted Central Park in white. Lily stood at the window of Ethan's apartment, their apartment now as of 2 weeks ago, watching Sophie make snow angels in the courtyard below. Her phone buzzed. A message from Sarah Martinez, the journalist. Article goes live tomorrow. Are you ready for this? Lily had decided to go public after all, but not as a victim. As an advocate, the piece Sarah had written focused on disability rights, on the casual cruelty society showed toward those who communicated differently. Ryan Mitchell was mentioned only as an unnamed individual whose harassment prompted a broader conversation. Lily's story was the centerpiece, but so were dozens of others Sarah had collected. The article would run in the Sunday Times with a full-page spread. Ready as I'll ever be, Lily texted back. The door opened behind her, and Ethan came in carrying grocery bags. His cheeks reddened from the cold. Sophie wants to build a snowman. I told her she needs to wait for you. She doesn't need to wait for me, Lily signed. Yes, she does, Ethan signed back with a gentle smile. You're her favorite person, remember? Over the past 3 months, their relationship had evolved slowly, carefully. 2 people scarred by loss and rejection, learning to trust again. Ethan had been patient, letting Lily set the pace. Their first kiss had happened 5 weeks in, during a quiet evening after Sophie had gone to bed. It had been tender, tentative, and absolutely right. Moving in together was Sophie's idea. She'd asked Santa for Lily to stay forever in her letter, and when Ethan had shown Lily the note, they'd both cried. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Ethan went to answer it, and Lily's breath caught when she saw who stood in the hallway. Victor Chen looked older than she remembered. Tired. He held a large box wrapped in simple brown paper. Hello. Lily, he said quietly. Then slowly his hands moved in signs he'd clearly practiced. May I come in? Lily's eyes widened. Ethan looked at her, letting her make the decision. After a long moment, she nodded. Victor entered hesitantly, like a man in unfamiliar territory. He set the box on the coffee table. I've been learning, he said, still signing along with his words. It's harder than I expected, but I should have learned 30 years ago. Lily's hands trembled as she signed. Why now? Because I was wrong, Victor signed, the movements clumsy but sincere. I was wrong about so many things. Wrong to make you feel ashamed. Wrong to try to fix something that wasn't broken. Wrong to choose my pride over my daughter. He gestured to the box. This is yours. Your mother's journals. I've been keeping them, but they should have been yours years ago. She wrote about you constantly, about how strong you were, how brave, how she wished I could see you the way she did. Lily opened the box with shaking hands. Inside were dozens of leather-bound journals, her mother's elegant handwriting filling every page. The first one she opened was dated to the year of her accident. Lily doesn't speak with words anymore, but she says so much more now. She notices things, people's expressions, body language, the things left unsaid. She's more observant at 12 than most adults ever become. Victor thinks this is a tragedy. I think it's a gift she's giving the world, if the world is wise enough to pay attention. Tears streamed down Lily's face. Ethan moved closer, his hand on her shoulder. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Victor signed. I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for a chance. To learn, to know you, to be the father your mother believed I could be. Sophie burst through the door at that moment, covered in snow, chattering in sign language about the snowman that needed building. She stopped short when she saw Victor, then looked at Lily with a question in her eyes. Lily knelt down to Sophie's level and signed, "This is my father. He's learning to talk with his hands like us. Can we teach him together?" Sophie considered this with the seriousness of a 7-year-old, then nodded solemnly. She marched up to Victor and signed, "Hello, I'm Sophie. Do you want to build a snowman?" Victor looked helplessly at Lily, clearly not understanding. She translated, her lips twitching with the beginning of a smile. "I would love that," Victor said, signing what he'd learned. "Thank you." An hour later, all 4 of them stood in the courtyard, building what might have been the ugliest snowman in Central Park's history. But Sophie declared it perfect, and that was all that mattered. Ethan watched Lily laughing silently as her father tried to lift Sophie to reach the snowman's head. The older man's expensive coat covered in snow. He thought about all the impossible things that had happened since that night in the restaurant. How one moment of choosing kindness over indifference had transformed multiple lives. That evening, after Victor had left with a promise to return for dinner later in the week, and Sophie was asleep clutching one of her grandmother's journals that Lily had read to her, Ethan found Lily on the couch staring at her mother's words. "You okay?" He signed. "Better than okay," she signed back. "I thought I'd lost my family forever. But I didn't lose it. I just had to find a new one. And then the old one found its way back." "That's a pretty good ending," Ethan signed. "It's not an ending," Lily corrected, pulling him down beside her. "It's a beginning." The next morning, Sarah Martinez's article hit the newsstands and went viral by noon. More Than Words began trending as thousands of people shared their own stories of discrimination, of being dismissed, of finding their voice in unexpected ways. Ryan Mitchell, reading it from London, felt something he rarely experienced. Shame, Victor Chen, reading it in his office, felt something he'd buried for years. Pride in his daughter. And Lily, reading it surrounded by Ethan and Sophie in their warm apartment, while snow fell outside, felt something she'd stopped believing in. Peace. Sometimes heroes don't announce themselves with fanfare. Sometimes they're just single fathers who choose to see someone when the rest of the world looks away. Sometimes they're women who refuse to apologize for existing. Sometimes they're 7-year-old girls who teach adults what unconditional love looks like. And sometimes, heroes are fathers who learn to say, "I'm sorry," in a language they should have learned decades ago. In a world that often values words over meaning, noise over substance, Lily and Ethan had discovered something profound. The deepest conversations happen in silence. The strongest bonds form in vulnerability, and family isn't about blood or perfection. It's about showing up, learning someone's language, and choosing them every single day. As Sophie would sign months later, at the small winter wedding in that same park where they'd built the ugly snowman. Love isn't something you say, it's something you show, and in the end, that was the only story that mattered.